What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of Best Bets and Props, where I go over all of my betting action for this weekend's UFC card, which is a very fun pay-per-view in Boston. UFC 292, we've got Aljamain Sterling in the main event defending his bantamweight title against the challenger Sean O'Malley. And in the co-main event, a very underrated fight in the women's strawweight division for a title as well. Zhang Weili defends against very dangerous fighter in the name of Amanda Lemos. So a very fun fight card, 12 fights altogether, including on the prelims, we've got two Ultimate Fighter Season 31 finale fights in the lightweight and the bantamweight division there. So we'll speak on one of those fights in this video. I'm just going to talk about fights I've got bets on, and this one, keep it short. But refer to last night's live stream. I did a special Thursday night edition with the MMA prediction guru, who's an OG of the game, a guy who's one of the most profitable MMA gamblers on the planet, and a guy who's been killing it for a long time. I draw a lot of inspiration for this channel based on watching his work over the years, so it was good to come face-to-face, break down some fights, and you'll be seeing more of him on my channel. Super easy guy to break down fights with. So check that one out for all 12 fights, all 24 fighters, analysis on them. But for this video, just going to go over the bets, and we've been doing pretty well on the betting side of things. The past couple weeks have been almost full sweeps, if not for Ignacio Bahamondes a couple fight nights ago. But last week, cashed every single bet on the card, made a lot of money. So this fight, it's going to be a little bit harder because I've got pretty much nothing but underdogs in this one. But I'm keeping the betting action pretty light. I'm only wagering 4.5 units in total. But I've got 4 underdogs on the money lines, and I've got 3 props as well. So these fighters are not supposed to win their fights as far as the odds makers are concerned, but I think they've got a far better shot at winning than their money line does indicate. So hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let's dive into this first bet of the night. On the prelims, I've got Marina Morose at women's flyweight defeating Karina Silva. And this is a spot where I think Marina Morose should be at least an even 50-50 implied odds to win, if not the favorite. She's far more experienced. She's a more active striker, a better striker in general, and she's fought some pretty dangerous finishers in her own right. Girls like Maria Agapova, she beat inside the distance in round 2 by submission. She stayed safe against Mayra Bueno Silva a couple years back, largely outstruck her and won by decision. So she's got a lot of UFC experience and experience against finishers and experience later in extended fights. Karina Silva can't say the same. She's looked very, very dangerous. She's got 16 victories, 16 of them are by finish. But the fights where she's gone to round 3, she's lost. That's happened on 2 occasions. One, a decision result, and one, she got finished in round 3. And Marina Morose, just to add some confidence to her side, she has beaten Karina Silva in the past, but it was about 9 years ago. It was a round 1 armbar finish. So not much I can really draw from that in conclusion to this fight, but on the Morose side, that's got to be an intangible that just gives her a little bit more added confidence and comfort to this fight. But I gotta say, Karina Silva, she's dangerous. She's got the more finishing upside in this fight. A heavy kicking game, heavy hands as well, but she's slower, less output, and I just think Marina Morose, who's never been finished before in her career, should be a little bit more of a favorite in this fight. But she's a plus 145 underdog, where I got her at for 1 unit investment. I think on most books she's moved down a bit to like plus 130, plus 135. I still like it at that number, so give me Marina Morose to pull off the upset here. I wouldn't even mind looking at those round 2, round 3 finish props, just since Karina Silva has so rarely been to the scorecards. Moving up the prelims to the middleweight division, I've got Gerald Meerschart coming through as the next underdog at plus 212 on his money line. I took on Bovada earlier this week for 0.7 units only to defeat Andrey Petroski. A very fun grappler versus grappler matchup here, where once again Gerald Meerschart, just like Marina Morose, the much more experienced fighter with 10 UFC wins alone, which is how many professional fights Andrey Petroski has in total. So Gerald Meerschart's got over 50 professional fights. He's been in the game for a while, and he's not that much older than Petroski, just older than him by 3 years at 35 years old, but he's seen a lot. He's got a lot of fight miles on him too, and his chin has been cracked a few times. That is a danger early in this fight, but Gerald Meerschart, I'm only taking 0.7 units on his money line because I'm adding 0.15 units to his inside the distance prop at plus 300 on DraftKings, and 0.15 units on his round 3 prop on the same sportsbook for plus 1,400. So again, if you're going to play Gerald Meerschart, it's a good chance he wins inside the distance. He's got 10 UFC wins. 10 UFC finishes, so 9 of those are submissions. One was that slick body kick on Eric Spicely a couple years back, but 4 of those finishes are in round 3. So this guy is known to go into deep waters, maybe possibly even lose the early portion of the fight, and then come through and overwhelm his opponent when they get tired and start making mistakes, putting their neck or their limbs in spots where they shouldn't. And Gerald Meerschart has got a good gas tank and works through fatigue to capitalize on mistakes. So a very dangerous grappler. I rate his BJJ a bit higher than Petrosky's, especially as this fight gets late. Petrosky's a very explosive athlete. He's got, probably not the better striking, but the more effective striking early, I would say, fighting in very explosive blitz attacks. And we've seen Meerschart get cracked early when he starts to move around slowly and find his range. So that is a danger in this fight. I would say Petrosky is the more dangerous guy early, but as this goes into round 2 and round 3, we have seen Petrosky slow down in some spots. So I'm going to bank on Gerald Meerschart to make this look like it should be a little bit closer than the money line indicates. Again, plus 212 for a guy with as much experience as Gerald Meerschart has. Petrosky, his way to win is to stay safe with the wrestling, not create any space in the dangerous guard of Meerschart, or to finish him early on the feet. So I'm going to bank on Gerald Meerschart surviving that early blitz attack of Andrey Petrosky, make him miss, pretty big and tire himself out and come through in round 2, or hopefully, for the sake of our prop at plus 1,400, finish the job by submission in round 3. Moving further along the prelims, I've got Kurt Holobaugh as the next underdog. I'm taking a shot on for 1 unit at plus 150 to defeat Austin Hubbard, and this is the Ultimate Fighter finale for the lightweights. And both of these fighters have been in the UFC before. Austin Hubbard, it's only been a couple of years since we saw him released from the roster in 2021 after dropping another loss to Vince Pichel. And he's a guy who lost to a lot of grapplers in the UFC. But Kurt Holobaugh, a guy who's mostly a striker. He's going to be forward pressure, the more aggressive guy moving forward, and just trying to land bigger shots. His combinations are very extended. He can usually catch fighters with that last of like 4 or 5 punches in this sequence. And he's got power. He's probably the more powerful potential fight ender of the 2 men here is Holobaugh. But he's decently older. He's 36 years old. A lot of fight miles on him. But, man, even though he never won in the UFC before getting cut, he fought some really talented fighters, including having a very successful early start to the fight against Tony Barcelos, who's a talented striker. So, really good BJJ on the mat, but neither of these guys, is really wrestling all that much. I will say, though, Austin Hubbard, if it goes that route, I think he will have the edge in the straight wrestling, shooting takedowns. I'm just not sure if Hubbard can hold down Holobaugh for enough periods of time to negate all of the forward pressure striking that Holobaugh is going to be throwing. So I'm going to take Holobaugh to make the better impact in this fight, which I think sees the scorecards more often than not. And I think Holobaugh will do enough to get the judges' nod over the course of the 3-round fight. So I think Holobaugh in round 1 and round 2, and I think Hubbard probably has got a better chance of winning in round 3. If there's one thing that Hubbard has, in his attributes that I think stands out, it's his cardio. He's a pretty good workhorse over the course of 3 rounds and can usually outlast his opponents. But as far as his other skill set, it's very general. His striking isn't all that powerful. It's not all that high output. Even his wrestling, it's good to get takedowns here and there and mix things up and stall. But as far as holding people down, not the best at that. So that's the problem with him. Even on the Ultimate Fighter season this past season was, his final fight against Roosevelt Roberts, super boring, low output fight, slow to warm up in round 1, some cage stalling, in the later parts of that fight as well. So nothing really stands out, and I think that's why he was cut from the UFC so prematurely after only 1 loss. So give me Holobaugh here. I think this fight should be closer to a pick'em price tag, but I got plus 150 on the underdog. And finally, this one is on the pay-per-view main card itself. It's a very short notice fight. I'm taking half of a unit on Damon Blackshear at plus 195 on BetOnline to defeat Mario Batista. Now, Batista was scheduled to face Cody Garbrandt, a much different test, and probably would have been a decent fight for Mario Batista, at least at first glance. He's a very explosive athlete, good striking weapons, flying knees, blitzing attacks. And he's managed to finish his last 3 fights all in round 1. And against the guy who's as chinny as Cody Garbrandt, that might have been a decent test for Batista, potentially. But Batista also finishes a lot of his fights with the groundwork. That's going to be a tough test against Damon Blackshear, who's a very experienced BJJ black belt, a good wrestler offensively and defensively, good reversal ability. And we just saw Damon Blackshear last weekend. It'll be 7 days to the day between fights for this guy. So a very, very quick turnaround, a very, very quick re-weight cut for this guy, which is dangerous. But like I mentioned, Damon Blackshear, again, on paper, this guy has never been finished before by knockout or submission. He's got more experience in extended fights, more experience against high-level competition in general, and he's a guy who's going to be a better grappler. So that knocks out a lot of the recent performances for Mario Batista, who's going to have to damage Blackshear with big moments in the striking realm. But Batista is one of these blitz attack guys where he looks for something big. He's got to kind of take some time to recharge, find his range again, another big blitzing attack, or he takes the fight to the mat. I just think that's going to be a very ineffective strategy against Damon Blackshear. So I was hoping for around plus 200 for Damon Blackshear. You might still get that number. I got greedy and couldn't wait to bet it, so I bet it at plus 195. But money probably still should be coming in on Batista, who's the guy who was on a full fight camp for this one. So you might be able to wait and see how Blackshear looks on the scales tomorrow and, make your decision there. But I'm just taking a half a unit at plus 195. So I'm taking one of the units I won on Blackshear last week, taking half of that and re-putting it on him again to try to cash in for another, this time a plus money tag. So yeah, I don't know. I might regret this, but it is a bantamweight fight that I think could go in the favor of Damon Blackshear here. So even on 7 days' notice, give me Blackshear to pull off the upset. So those are the money lines. Like I said, all underdogs. The Marina Morose, the Gerald Meerschart, Kurt Holobaugh, and Damon Blackshear. Taking stabs on them. Hopefully the majority of them come through and we profit off of those plus money tags. The props I mentioned, I had the Gerald Meerschart inside the distance, the Gerald Meerschart round 3. My final prop is the Gregory Rodriguez, Dennis Talulin, under 1.5 at minus 175. I picked up on Bovada for just 1 unit on this one. Rodriguez, the better fighter here. I mean, besides his lacking durability we've seen, he did get cracked on the Contender Series a few years ago by Jordan Williams. He got knocked out in round 1 against Bruno Ferreira back in January. Dropping the ball is a massive favorite in that fight. And Rodriguez has got a very well-rounded skill set. He's got a good BJJ game, but he likes to stand and bang. And against Dennis Talulin, who's largely just a boxer himself and an early finisher, that would go right into the hand of Dennis Talulin. So hopefully Rodriguez does the smart thing, takes the fight to the mat, and grinds out a submission. But either way, if Dennis Talulin gets his chance to crack the chin of Rodriguez, we'll cash this under. If Rodriguez stands and bangs, he's got a good chance of knocking out Talulin himself. We'll cash the under, or he can take the fight to the mat, lock in the full hooks or the body triangle, and just choke out Talulin, who's lost, I think, 5 of 7 of his losses are inside the distance. 4 of those 5 losses for Talulin are by submission, including his 2 UFC losses, which were both under 1.5 round submission losses. So all of the stats point to this going under 1.5 rounds. Like I said, Rodriguez is a finisher, finishing 11 of his 13 wins. Many of them knockouts, a few of them submissions. So, look, I think that this is going to be a pretty fast and violent fight no matter who wins. I'm rooting for Rodriguez, but just taking it under 1.5. So as far as any other recommended plays on this card, I don't have a whole lot just because there were so many big favorites in this card. Natalia Silva's a huge favorite. I think she wins. Ian Gary, I think he wins, but he's too big of a favorite. The main event itself is sketchy to me. I'm staying off of that. And again, Zhang Weili in the co-main event, a big favorite, but I'm not finding a lot of ways to play that fight. I know Lemos is very dangerous. So I have the underdog plays I have. I've got the small props I have. The recommended props, just going off of that Rodriguez fight we just spoke on. Rodriguez by submission at plus 225. That seems like an obvious play, but it's a strategy. I think Rodriguez, not always the guy who's going to go for the submission side of things, right? He likes to stand and bang. It's in front of a large audience. He likes to play to the crowd. So I'm not taking a stab at him by sub myself, but it is something that I think is the most obvious path to victory against Dennis Talulin. And then Rodriguez by submission in round 1 is a measly plus 300. But Rodriguez by submission in round 2, that's plus 1,100 on DraftKings. So if he damages Talulin, tires him out in round 1, gets close to that finish but doesn't quite get it, hopefully early round 2, We can see the clock go past 5 minutes of this fight. Rodriguez goes to the mat and then submits Dennis Talulin. You could cash out 11-1 on that prop. I like that one quite a bit. A sketchy fight in this next one, but I think it does make sense. Brad Tavares versus Chris Weidman at middleweight. I like the overs in this fight in principle. You know, I don't have the balls to pull the trigger on this myself, but the over 1.5 at -205, the over 2.5 at -110. I think both of those could hit. You know, Brad Tavares is not a finisher. He's a kickboxer, but he's had like 1 or 2 finishes in the UFC, and they were a long time ago. And this guy's had a long career. Chris Weidman, he's got all the tools to nullify the striking weapons of Brad Tavares by just shooting takedowns, grabbing that control time. And I think after a long layoff, it might be like a bit of a feeling out process as far as burning time off the clock, going for single leg takedowns. Brad Tavares has got very good takedown defense. They could have a little bit of a clinch wrestling type of engagement against the cage that could burn time off the clock, cash these overs. And if Weidman does employ that game plan effectively, Brad Tavares is in a lot of decisions. So if Weidman were to get that nod, plus 500 for Weidman by decision. This is not how I see this fight playing out. I think Weidman is far too washed up. I think Tavares will find a way to get the victory here, but I still think the overs cash either way. And I got to say, I think Weidman decision at plus 500 is just mispriced. So the over 1.5 at -205, the over 2.5 at -110, and the Weidman decision at plus 500. My guy last night, MMA Prediction Guru, definitely liked that prop. I think he did put money on that one. So, again, I don't have the balls to play it myself. I do think Tavares wins, but these are some ways to play this fight I think the odds are a little bit off on. And last but not least, my final prop is in the main event itself. I played this myself, but I used bonus bets that DraftKings gave me. It was my birthday a couple days ago, so I think they gave my account like $10 or something. So I put that on the point deduction prop, which is at plus 2,000, aka the yam bag prop, as my guy Lou Bet you would call it. I hope he's proud of me for recommending this one. In the main event between Aljamain Sterling and Sean O'Malley, plus 2,000 for a point to be deducted. I think it could happen in a number of ways. You've got Sean O'Malley always range finding with his long jab out of both stances. He keeps his fingers out there. He could easily catch the eye of Aljamain Sterling just like he did Pedro Munoz a couple fights ago. Aljamain Sterling going to be wrestling, looking for the takedown and the back take. You could catch Sean O'Malley trying to grab the fence the way he did against Peter Yan back in October. So any of these repeated fouls in a title fight could definitely render a point deduction. So for plus 2,000 on DraftKings, I took that for the bonus bet for $10. So that's how I spent my birthday money that DraftKings gave me. So Lou Betia, hope you're proud of me, but I think that is a viable way to play the main event, which I find to be a very sketchy fight because both of these fighters have had a lot of results go in split decisions, no contests, DQs. I mean, this fight could go a number of ways. Ultimately, I think Aljamain Sterling wins, but to play that plus 2,000 point deduction, I don't think that's such a bad way to play it. So those are all of my bets for this card. 4 underdog money lines, 3 props, some recommended plays for you guys. Hit me in the comments with your best bets and plays for this card at UFC 292 in Boston. I'd love to know how you guys plan to make money this weekend. I myself kept it pretty light. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the majority of these fights for once. But hit the like, hit the subscribe, and best of luck in all of your betting action this Saturday. Cheers.